And what I wanted to bring up a little bit in the next few minutes while we can, because this is just funny to me, that when when Tim Walz was selected, the Trump campaign released this statement saying it's no surprise that San Francisco liberal Kamala Harris wants West Coast wannabe. Look, I gotta say, West Coast wannabe does roll off the tongue. That's the only thing that I thought was catchy. West Coast wannabe Tim Walz as her running mate. Walz has spent his governorship trying to reshape Minnesota in the image of the Golden State, while Walz pretends to support Americans in the heartland. When the cameras are off, he believes that rural America is mostly cows and rocks, from proposing his own carbon-free agenda to suggesting stricter emission standards for gas-powered cars and embracing policies that allow convicted felons to vote. Walz is obsessed with spreading California's dangerously liberal agenda. I just wanted to talk about the hilarity of the fact that the Donald Trump campaign has the fucking balls to say, can you believe they're allowing convicted felons to vote? Because look, I know that Republicans don't like that shit, but come on, Donald Trump is your nominee. And what we were wondering, EK, I don't know your thoughts on this. I think that this is as good a time as any to start pushing forth an agenda that we need to nationwide overhaul this whole all the pockets where felons can't vote. And you can get it done, like Walz pushed for it in Minnesota and everything. And it's one of the rare issues where the Republicans literally, they're hypocrites all the time. It's hilariously hypocritical now. And so I say strike while the iron is hot. While they're still big fans of Trump, make the sons of bitches actually fight against this thing that they clearly don't actually support, except for this one guy right here.
Yeah, so I want to change the phrase from allowing convicted felons to vote to allowing slaves to vote, because essentially we are talking about whether or not slaves should vote. According to the 13th Amendment of our own Constitution, slavery can be used as a punishment for crime. If you get convicted of a felony, you go to prison, you are forced to work in very harsh conditions, depending on what prison that you end up in. If you do not work, you are punished. You go to solitary. You are, forbidden from doing any rehabilitative things that the prison might have for you. You're not able to make whatever money for commissary, or in some cases the people that are working don't get paid anyway. These people are slaves, per the Constitution of the United States. These people are slaves. So should slaves be allowed to vote? Yes, absolutely. Why? For a number of reasons. Number one, they are counted towards the census for the different states that they reside in. If you have a state like Texas, who has more prisons and jails than they do colleges and universities. In fact, only 13 states of the 50 states have more colleges and universities than they do prisons and jails. I was in Washington State. We have more prisons and jails out here than we have colleges and universities, and we're a pretty blue state. But anyways, so that's counting towards the census. There are several states which probably have a couple extra electoral votes that they probably shouldn't have, or that they probably wouldn't have if it weren't for the fact that they get to count, their prison population. You're taking people, from big states like California, and you're shipping them to let's say Alabama, Louisiana, for example. Louisiana's got all these extra prisoners that they now get to count towards their census rolls, and they're also receiving more money from the federal government for that, because they get to count those people as citizens, even though they are in fact slaves. And it's essentially taxation without representation, which is apparently, according to the history books, what this country was founded on, right? The federal government gets a say in these people's lives, directly in these people's lives. Hey, you can do this with prisoners, you can do that with prisoners. The damn constitutional amendment saying that they can be slaves, is something that they can't vote against. They have no political power. So they should absolutely have some sort of representation. They should absolutely be allowed to vote. In other countries, their prisoners are allowed to vote. They are allowed to vote from prison. They'll have people come through. Here's your ballot. Like these are the candidates that you get to choose from. It is a huge crime. It's worse than the goddamn 3/5 majority because at least 3 out of every 5. So yes, absolutely. Slaves should be allowed to vote 100%.
Yo, John, do you remember last time EK was on and delivered like a banger, like 4-minute monologue? Do you remember that? He just did it again. Like
Yep.
EK is just coming with the fire. I love it, man. And I'm glad you brought the 3/5 compromise. I was gonna say it's like this is the modern 3/5 compromise. And you're right. It's perfect for this. Sorry, John. Go ahead.
No, it is. I don't have much to add. EK really just nailed that point by point. But I do want to say a couple things. One, this is something that from a very young age, I didn't understand the argument against, because if anyone should be allowed to vote, it is felons who have more government in their lives than anyone else. Like if anyone should have a say about what the government does, it's the people who are most affected by the government, which is felons. And it's just a weird thing to me where it's like, okay, even if you're like when they're in prison, they can't vote as like punishment. I disagree, but at least I maybe kind of get it conceptually. But even once you're out of prison, they can't vote. That doesn't make any fucking sense to me. Like, what is the entire point of rehabilitation? Why let them out of prison in the first place if you don't think they should be able to vote? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's completely antithetical to why we should have a justice system. If we just like strip people of their right to vote because they committed a crime. But also it kind of speaks a lot to, and I feel like this isn't just a Republican thing. I feel like if you asked a lot of, liberal moderates this, they'd probably give the same telling response where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I don't think felons should be allowed to vote, but it wouldn't make sense for Trump not to be allowed to vote. He isn't that kind of felon.
Oh,
and
wow.
That I really feel like in their heart of hearts, they don't understand the implications of what they're saying. But I think it's very true in that, yeah, it doesn't feel right that Donald Trump shouldn't be allowed to vote to them, but it also doesn't feel right that those felons should be allowed to vote. And, that they'll never really figure out why that is, but we all know why that is.
Yeah. It's like, I remember talking about this too, because I think I was in high school when I learned this, that felons couldn't vote. And I would ask, hey, well, how come they can't? And the answers people gave were because really ask people, like, why shouldn't felons vote? And listen to their answers. A lot of them will say stuff like, well, if we let, child predators vote, they would vote to make, child predation legal. It's like, you think there's that many child predators, like convicted child predators in the United States? Like, if that's the case, our country's gone to shit. It's falling apart. Like if there's a majority of people who think it's like we should legalize child rape, the country's falling apart in the first place. So, but those are the answers you get. They don't make any sense.
Yeah,
but
the
that's
libertarians
just
aren't ever going to win, TJ.
Right, the libertarians. Yeah, there's not nearly enough of them. Thank God. And but John, what you talk about with it extends a lot more than to voting, like you guys are mentioning. This is like a conceptual problem that we value punishments more than we value fixing actual problems. That there's like, it's like why people support the death penalty, because like in my heart, if you ask me if the death penalty makes sense, hell yeah, it does. Like in my heart, it does. Like you kill somebody, you forfeit your right to live. That seems fair to me. However, I know it doesn't work. I know that it's actually counterproductive, that, like the further back you go in time when people get executed left and right, we had more murders. Like, states that have the death penalty do not have lower rates of homicides. It's actually, better for society to not have this. And the fact that, certain percentage of people are innocent that are executed. So, yeah, there's no way we can justify it. But, the whole justifying your revenge part, that lizard brain response kind of works on people. And also how they think that, people should continue to be punished after they've paid their debt to society. That's a wild thing. I don't think that you should need to report your criminal history when you're applying for a job at all, unless it applies to the job. Like if you went to jail for bank fraud and you try to get a job at Wells Fargo, they need to know that. Like that's absolutely, pertinent. But other places, no, it's fine. It doesn't matter. So yeah, the fact that we tell people that, you committed the crime, we literally say paying your debt to society, and you continue paying that debt for the rest of your life. And a lot of times it stops you from getting, gainful employment, and you're not going to starve. You're not going to sit there and be homeless. You're going to go back to crime. And it has this feedback loop over and over again. And you even take them out of politics. So like the one place where every person is supposed to be involved. And like, EK, I'm so glad you brought thinking about the red states, where they're like, red states like love packing. I didn't know it was that many states, that it was like 35, 36 states that have more prisons than schools. And they're literally just doing the same thing they did with 3/5 compromise stuff and pre-Civil War stuff. Is like, yep, we're gonna round up a bunch of black people and take away their autonomy and their representation and keep it for ourselves. It's framing it through the slavery thing and 13th Amendment, I think, is a great idea. So yeah, just 8 o'clock perfectly. Look at that. Nailed it. So wanted to get on that, but yeah, thank you guys for that one.
Yeah, no, it's the other thing I want to say too, as far as like, since we're on the subject of prisons, it's just like we also need like to improve like a baseline condition of the prisons. I mean, people's punishment is that they get taken out of society and put into a place where their lives are extremely controlled for whatever set amount of time. Like that is your punishment. Your punishment is not that on top of that you have no air conditioning. On top of that, you have like no access to like whatever your like dietary restriction thing might be, or you have to like you're not properly educated or something like that. If you go like just like people, we have like a very punitive mindset, like which needs a cultural change. Like you pay your debt to society with whatever your punishment is, and then you continue paying your debt like afterwards. Like that has to be changed. And if prisoners could vote, like you would see something coming on along the lines that would probably make everything better, like, and lead to less recidivism, because I think prisoners probably have a good idea as to what would help them, like to not be in the carceral system anymore. But that is a voice that is going completely unheard for no good reason at all.
Hard agree.
Mr. Before we move on, Mr. Twitler had an interesting statistic here. First of all, he said he subbed and liked, so thank you very much, Mr. Twitler.
Good man.
And he said 99% of prisons for profit donations in 2020 went to Donald J. Trump. The private prisons have already maxed corporate donations to Trump as of May this year. Now, people go look that up because it's a totally unsubstantiated piece of evidence. But I wouldn't be surprised if that was true at all. Like that's definitely we know where the private prisons get buttered, and it's with the Republican Party.
That would make sense because Biden, like he push through a ban on private prisons. I remember him doing that like this year or last year.
Something with private prisons.
Yeah, so that would make sense if they were all backing Trump because he could save their jobs. Yeah.